All right. Good morning slash afternoon slash evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm going to go ahead and get this lunch and learn kicked off and introduce myself, and we can get started. I'm just getting a few things sorted out on my end. Give me just a moment, and we are good to go. All right, wonderful. Yeah, let's go and do this. Welcome, everyone. I haven't done a lunch and learn in a while, so let me introduce myself before we dive too deep into this. My name is Eric Womerink. I have been with Decisions for over 8 years now. This is year 9, I guess I could say, and I've done a little bit of everything. So I've gotten a chance to work with Decisions. I actually started as a junior developer writing some code. And then I bounced around as we've grown from team to team, helping kind of support the organization. I've done big professional services projects. I've done support builds. I was our IT ops security compliance for a while. For about the past 5 years, I did training. But currently, what I'm doing is I'm actually helping lead the product ownership, product roadmap type stuff. So I kind of help sit in between the product team and customers such as yourself and our employees, and help to drive the direction of the product and make sure that we are solving the correct problems and moving in the right direction and continually making the product better. So that's just a little bit about me and why I'm here and some of the expertise I'm going to bring to the table. And we're going to go from there. So yeah, just as a quick reminder, we do these daily Monday through Thursday from 12 to noon Eastern time. You're going to get a number of different hosts on here with different experience levels. We have Will Pedersen, who's the vice president of customer success. We have myself. We're going to have a bunch of support team members. We have professional services members. So you get a couple different viewpoints and expertise here. But like I said, my expertise currently is kind of understanding the roadmap and decisions from that end. So if you have any questions related to that, please feel free to post them in the chat. Feel free to post them in the Q&A panel. If there are no questions, I can talk a little bit about the product roadmap and what we're kind of doing over the next few months here. And I have some slides I can present that way. And we will just kind of go from there. So that is the plan. And we can go ahead and get started. All right, wonderful. So we did have one pre-submitted question I'm going to dive into first. So as I'm going through this, feel free to type out your other questions and we can go from there. But this one's going to talk about end user visibility actions. So here's the use case in the example that was the question was submitted for. It says, for example, users have access to a dashboard, and when they click on something to take action on it, in this case, a request, they should only have a limited series of actions. In this case, edit the record or view the request. However, this user that they have can see every single option, such as delete, move, I'm guessing all the other sort of management style options as well. So how do we control that? And so let's talk about how permissions and actions are kind of used in decisions and how you can set those up so that their users have really specific visible things that they can do. And there's two ways that we can control this. There are two ways that really we list the different actions that a user can take on anything in decisions. The first is by folder permissions. So what permissions does the user have to the data itself, which controls like all of your actions on the left-hand side here. So depending on your user group, you can set permissions on the folders themselves to see these types of actions. But there's also another feature called action visibility rules. And action visibility rules allow you to actually write a statement rule using any part of the data that's available or the user context that we know about in order to also limit actions or even entire groups of actions. So let's go ahead and I'm going to build something really simple to demonstrate that concept right away. So I'm in Decisions. This is version 8, by the way, which is our latest released version. We released this just about a month ago on March 16th. And our currently next slated version of it, 8.1, the first update was slated for next week on the 27th. So if you see a few little UI changes or differences here, like for example, this sidebar and folder panel, that might be why, because I'm on version 8, 8.0 specifically. But I'm in a folder inside Decisions, a designer folder specifically, so that I have all my actions. And I'm going to go ahead and just create a data structure that has actions, like an entity. And we're going to go ahead and do it this way. My entity, since the question was around requests, let's just call this like we'll do a time off request. Or maybe we'll we'll just call it a request. And simple. And I'm going to put a few really simple attributes like request name, maybe a needed by date. And that's going to be of object date time. Let's go ahead and add one more like, oh gosh, I'm blanking, like is urgent. And that could be a Boolean. So just a couple data members This is a request that we're going to have created and stored in the database. So I'm going to create the data structure, click save, let that compile. Takes just a moment. Awesome. There we go. Now I'm going to create a couple of these so that they're stored in the database, so that they live in decisions, so I can see some of these actions and when I go to report on them or view them or see them. So I'm going to create a very quick flow. It's going to say create some dummy requests. And then I'm going to come over to my flow steps catalog, go to user defined types, find my entity I just created that is called request. And I'm just going to create a couple of these. So let's go ahead and create one. We'll put it in the same folder where I am under visibility actions. And I expect it to see data. Okay. I'm seeing a little bug in here. I would expect to be able, when I create the request, to define my data. So something may have gone a little wrong here. And if this doesn't work, we can, we can try this another way. Yeah, something's definitely unhappy with me here. So item to create. Yeah, I don't see something called item to create. This could be because I was playing around with some system settings earlier. I may have broken something on my end. Okay, well, we're going to create this a different way. Normally you'd have a process or a flow that goes ahead and creates your data. I'm going to actually, if you are unaware of this feature, you can edit the definition for the data structure directly and add an action on the portal level that any designer user who has permissions to this entity type can actually just add it straight from the portal. So I'll enable that. So that now I can come over here to my folder and I can go to add entity. I might have to refresh my screen to get the action to show up, but there should be an add entity, and then I should have a request here. Man, I'm failing twice. Other unit tests. Okay, well, I have utterly failed on my quest here. Let's see if I try a different folder. Yeah, I don't see it. Neat. I have a case I can add it to. Okay, well, since this isn't working, let's go ahead and use an existing data structure because the concept of visibility will still be the same. This is fun. This is a data structure I was playing with locally. This is a case entity, which is a different type of data structure that allows you to set things like case states and trigger flows and define a process by the states that it's going to exist in. And so I've created one here that is a case, and you can see that test case, or if I create a new one, this is for features and things we're adding to the product that require design documents. Let's go and add one and say we're going to add ability for VR form development. So in a VR platform, you can build forms. By the way, we're not adding that, but just as a fun example. So when I go create that thing, now this is a case. This is data that lives in decisions. And if I right click, I have all of the actions tied to this thing that I can do. I have my case actions, like making this a current case that we're going to work on, or opening the design document to start editing it. But I also have all these system actions: change state, create root folder, edit the document, etc. How do I limit these actions based on either the user or the permissions? Like I said, there's two ways we could do it. The first is because this data lives in decisions, it's actually in my folder here as RD0002, I can limit actions to this folder specifically. So I can right click, go to the folder and say manage, and manage permissions. And if I add specific permissions here, like can edit or can view or can open, those will be respected by that right click context menu. So when I right click it, I won't be able to edit one, or if I right click on the folder, I won't be able to add a new case. And so that's kind of a generalized permission structure. So anything inside the folder level, I will have these kind of restricted permissions in order to control those. So that's one way to do it. But I believe another way, which is actually the question that was asked, is take my dashboard, for example. I have a design document dashboard. I right click and I want to say, well, I don't want this change state action to be shown to users in this group or to a specific user, or based on the data that's available, I want to restrict actions. And that's where I was saying you could write a statement rule, an action visibility rule, to do that level of work. And so in any data structure you've built, I can actually go look at these other data structures I've built, or my visibility actions configuration folder. But in data structures you build, there's a configuration folder that gets generated. And this configuration folder is where you set up things like action visibility rules, or in other cases, you can set up things like access patterns, or you can set up things like on a case entity, like the different states that exist and the actions between them. But one of these actions I should have here under other is I should be able to say user validation rule. It's over on the right. I define the action. I can create what's called an action visibility rule. And you can do this for any data structure in decisions that's reportable. So you can do this for any of your defined structures like database structures and entities and case entities. You can also do it for out of the box data structures like accounts and groups and named sessions. So if you want to restrict permissions with those, you actually can go to its configuration folder and set up these action visibility rules as well. But let's say we want to hide, what was it? Change state action for all users. Perfect. That's, I like to give descriptive names. But then when you come into here, you get a big note at the top that says, hey, if this rule returns true, we'll take away this action. We will filter it out and, we'll go from there. So now you have a statement rule that lets you choose which actions or action you want to hide and what the conditions are to hide that action. So let's go ahead and do it. I say if the action, and you can say you can hide it by action group, by the category of action, by whether it's a favorite or not. You have all the properties around the kind of right-click action that you have. But if I say if the action.name equals change state, so now I can say this is the action I'm trying to evaluate. And then I can just add a statement rule condition. And if maybe the logged in user is me. So I'm logged in as admin at decisions.com. So if the admin at decisions.com email address equals, I'm not Eric, so admin at decisions.com, then this rule will evaluate true and the change state action will be filtered out. And so you can see, since it's a statement rule editor where I can build and define all these things, I can literally write any statement rules. I can add either or conditions. I can filter out more than one state. I can add and conditions here to have complex logic, but I can build whatever business logic I want in a statement rule and have that be the thing that determines whether or not I show an action. So now it shows up in my configuration folder here. If I go back to the case editor, I should see it down below. Yep. I can edit it here if, I didn't actually want to, but I can edit it here if I would like to see it. And if I go back to a reporting source that is showing me this data and that rule is going to evaluate true, like I am logged in as admin at decisions.com. Now, as soon as I right click it, you'll notice I don't have the change state action anymore because I've effectively filtered it out. So those are the two ways that you can have, look at a user's permissions or write a statement rule and understand what actions they have available to them. I actually have a third way that I was waiting to talk about because it's another way you can do this outside of the data. So that those first two options apply globally. Anywhere this data is reported, it's going to look at its folder permissions and it's going to look for any of those action visibility rules. But a final way, say, for example, I wanted to hide it on this page specifically. So I have this page here, which is showing me my design document dashboards or my case dashboards or my R&D dashboards. And I say, well, I want to hide maybe edit design document for anyone who hits this page specifically. That's another way you can hide this. And you do that from the page editor. So if you jump in to our page dashboard here, you find the report that is shown, that jumped to oddly, you find the report that is demonstrated, or that is where you want to hide or show the actions. And under behavior, you can actually come down here and there's an ability to filter actions either by category or by name. So if I say I want to filter actions and names to show, I got to remember, I think this one's a little bit backwards. The things I want to show, maybe I only want to show make current. Let's just try that for now because I know that's an action. And I click save. Now this is only going to apply wherever that defined page is built. So now if I jump back to my case and I come here, now I only see the one action. I filtered out all other actions and I only see make current. So in total, there's actually 3 ways to start to filter actions. You can do it on the page level, you can do it on the data level, or you can do it on the folder level. And those are how we'd approach that. All right, I'm rereading the question very quickly to make sure I answered it. I believe I did. And again, as with any of the lunch and learns, if any of this doesn't answer your questions, feel free to clarify in the chat or the Q&A panel, or we can follow up with a support ticket after the call. All right, number 2 question comes in. Are we able to update archived fields, archived, archived on, archived by, etc., on entity data type structures without having to delete the entity? We'd like to update report on that field without having to delete records. Okay, wow, this is a very timely question. I appreciate you asking this. We're actually redesigning a little bit how archive entities work. So this is going to change in version 8.3, which is scheduled for June? No, April, May, June. It is June. Okay, so this is scheduled for June. Sorry, quick math in my head. So this is going to change a little bit. But are you able to update those fields? Yes, you can from any flow actually update any individual member of a structure. So if I go into a workflow, I'm going to try to go back into here. I'm not sure why my request flow was broken, but there is a step in your toolbox and it lives, let's see if I can find it. It lives under integration entity framework. No, bummer. Okay, I'm not sure where it lives, but it's called update entity. An update entity allows you to pick any data structure that you have. So let's just say update an account. And then it's going to give you all of the properties for those members or for that data structure. And so on this update entity step, if I chose this update, it's going to ask for an ID to update, and then I can say update the archived or the archived by or the archived date. So those are ways to kind of update those fields. Now, the way entity or archiving is going to change a little bit is here's how archiving currently works. Currently, there is a bunch of things we archive out of the box. So if you go to system settings and go to archive settings, anything you have in the system that is marked as archivable, like logs or like scheduled job logs and some other sorts of caching data that we have and other sorts like integration activities, job schedules, etc. They will default archive in 30 days, but it's not a proper archive. Archiving actually just deletes it. So after 30 days, that data is deleted and you can't recover it. You also can set that up specifically for a type. So if I say, okay, well, I want to archive all of my, and these are all the members that can get archived. I want to archive all of my, I don't know, named sessions that have been deleted after 30 days. You can do that. But like I said, it's not a proper archive. What happens in decisions is when you right click and delete something, it deletes it, it soft deletes it. So it marks it as deleted in the database, and then it marks it for archival, and it waits till the 30-day timer is over, and then it goes and archives that thing, which does a full database delete. What we want to add here is a setting, which I guess I can annotate on my screen if I wanted to, but we're going to add a setting right around here that allows you to set up a proper archival storage location. So now you can actually specify another database, like another SQL database, another table in the same database, potentially even like a file storage somewhere. And you can say, when this 30-day archival process is over, instead of just deleting it from decisions, go properly archive it. And it will go connect to whatever connection you've set up here, and it will go store the data on irregular intervals into that new location. That will then allow you to properly report on it in decisions as an archived thing. So the question that was asked, yes, you can have flow steps or queries that go in and allow you to update some of those fields like archived by and archived on. And you can do that manually. But what we're adding in the future is a proper archival process so that when it does archive, it actually stores it in a secondary database or a file storage or somewhere, and then you can just still report on it naturally, like you would report on anything in decisions. Now, as a very, very side technical note, that will be a slower reporting mechanism because you're archiving on something that is now an external integration, rather than something that is native or inside decisions ORM. But that's just another discussion to have. So in short, yes, you can update those things, and then you have all the reporting mechanisms to report normally as you would like write any report. But that's also getting a little bit of an update in the future. So I don't know if that changes kind of your plan there. So keep that in mind as well. I get really excited about things we're doing in the future. I guess that's why I'm good at the product management job. All right, another question came in. Is there a setting for multi-select dropdown control that allows you to select multiple values without the selection panel closing after every selection? Interesting. And hey, Marcus, by the way, good to see you. Question was asked, I know the gentleman asking it. I actually don't know much about the multi-select dropdown. Let's go take a look together. This could be something we fix. So let's create a form, create a normal form, and let's go play with multi-select dropdown. So we have under data controls, multi-select dropdown. I'm going to put it in a little bit of a bigger square and kind of make my form a little bit better to use. Okay, so I have multi-select dropdown. I have a button at the bottom that leaves my form without the E. Okay, and let's set this up. Let's just make it strings for now. I'm going to make a static list. I have 6 options. Great. And so if you're unfamiliar with this control, what this control does is show drop down form. Sorry, I'm building a really simple flow that has my form in it that I just built. Take existing there. Good. So the multi-select dropdown does is it gives you a dropdown list like you would expect, but instead of being able to select only one item, like 3, and then having it fill the dropdown, you actually can select multiple. And you'll see 3 is no longer a choice. So I can actually keep clicking this dropdown and finding and adding more to the list. The output of that control is going to be a list of choices. So the list of my selected is 3, 5, 4, 2 in the order that I selected them in. So that's the multi-select control. The question that comes in is there a setting that allows you to select multiple values without it closing after every selection? Okay. So what you saw happen was as I clicked the dropdown and I selected the item 2, the dropdown closed, and then it now I have to go click the dropdown again and pick it again, or hit down again and hit the next, and hit down again and hit the next. So I'd either have to use keyboard shortcuts or I'd have to keep clicking here. Is there a setting that changes that? I don't believe so. So let me double check that quickly. I think that's a reasonable ask. But yeah, I don't see an ability to say, like multi-select within the dropdown. So in short, no, that is something we can add as a feature request, and you're talking to the right guy who's now taking care of feature requests. So that's something we can evaluate and look at and see what we need. The other option is that we do have, and I know this won't work for you, but I know we do have a multi-select checkbox list, which is, I guess it's just called checkbox list. It is called checkbox list, and one that you also can sort. And that's a little different, but it's kind of instead of having a big drop down, what you see here is all of your choices show up as one big list, and then you can checkbox them, and then it will send the list out. So it's a little bit of a different UI. So what we'll do is I will take notes here. We'll go ahead and add this as a feature request to not close the drop down in between selections, and maybe you can select like 6 of them and then they all show up. But we also have this control here, which does a similar idea, but obviously different behavior. And so on this one, the difference is that it shows your entire list first, but then you can select and say go. Oh, you're going to yell at me for not picking one. And then it's the same kind of data experience where you have your selected options and what you did there. So yeah, let's go ahead and add that as a feature request. It's not something we currently can do, but I think we can look at adding that. All right, next question. Is there a way to show the checkbox list on the report? For example, if the user chooses laptop, keyboard, and mouse, when I try to display it on the report, nothing shows up. Is there a way to display a list on a report? Yeah, great question, and something we run into often. We don't have, so let me jump into a report to show you what we're talking about. I don't know if I have a good data structure to demonstrate this. Okay. Let me think about this for just a second. I don't know if I have a default data source that one of the members is a list. So let's level set for everyone on the call. on a data structure, you can have a list of things inside that data structure. So let's just create a new one. I know this wasn't working correctly, but let's create a simple database structure. We're going to call this Eric. Eric has a name. He has a birthday. Let's make this a little more generic. Let's name this a person. Oh, not print. Sorry. Let's name this a person. Person has a name, a birthday, and maybe they have, favorite colors. Favorite colors is a list of strings, which you can do. You can add those in the field and sort of stuff. So you get a big warning down here, and this warning has two implications. One is that what it's basically saying is it's not compatible with our object relationship mapping editor or object relationship mapping engine. And so when you go to access this in the database, just SQL doesn't understand a list of strings as one of the columns as part of a table. So it's saying, hey, what we're going to have to do is take that list of strings and binary serialize it and essentially turn it into a bunch of text and then store it in the database that way. And then we deserialize it in your flows and when you're working with. So that's implication number one. But implication number two is then when I go to report on people or a person, report on persons is person, singular. I can go absolutely report on the person that I built and defined, but you'll notice I only have the ID, the first, middle. This is not the data structure I built. I must have been playing with person ahead of time. Let's see if there's another person here. I think my compile is failing, and so I'm not seeing all my data structures work properly the way I expect them to. Bummer. That's going to be unfortunate to show. Looks like it compiled properly. And I have person name, birthday, and favorite colors. Let's try one more time. Might try to restart my instance while I answer this question and see if I can get this to work. User defined types, database structures. Yeah, it's not here. Okay, bummer. Okay, well, in short, I wouldn't be able to report on that field because it's a singular column type report and it doesn't know how to represent a list of things as a singular object. So I'm just going to talk through the solution here. Give me a second to also pause my screen sharing so I can try to restart my instance and hope that this works. But the solution is essentially you have a couple options. The first is that on the data, on the reporting engine, we need to somehow show a list of choices. And so I think the question was asked is a way to show a checkbox list. You can add a right-click action to any data structure. So just like we added a visibility action, you can add, or visibility for the action, you can write a flow that is a right-click action on any report. So you could say right-click view details or right-click view information and show a checkbox list on a form that's like a pop-up or like a dialogue, fill it out, do whatever you need to click save, and then it would go ahead and update that report in the back end. So depending on your user experience, you could say right click, show this thing, make my changes, and then click save, and then it updates my report. That would be one way to do that. All right, my instance is coming back up now. I'll resume sharing, and hopefully this will fix my issue that I'm seeing. Okay, let's see if this is going to be happier. And if not, that's fine. I can still talk about the answer. Yeah, that doesn't look right. This is the old one. Yep, okay, bummer. All right, well, I have completely broken my local install somehow. Yep, not there. Okay, no worries. But the other way is on a page, as say you wanted to show something when you make a selection on one report, you can show, refresh data on a second control or a second option on your page. So what you can do is, let's just build a page, simple page or dashboard. This is a cool feature of decisions. Anytime you have two things on decisions, like say I had a report on the left-hand side and then maybe an edit properties panel on the right-hand side, which can be it actually just be a form. You can actually put a form and embed that on a report or on a page rather, which is under the controls. It's under data. No, oh my gosh, it's been forever. Where's the, where do we move the flow reporting thing? Gosh darn it. Flow run part. There it is. I don't know where it exists in there. But what a flow run part does is it actually allows you to run a flow to display the data on a page. So you can tie any two controls together with what we call selection bus. So when I make a selection on one side of my page, it actually updates a second side of my page. So maybe you have two reports here where you make a selection on one and you show the list of options in the other. We call them parent-child reporting. Or you can even do it with flow run parts, where when I make a selection here, you'll see I have a checkbox that says update the flow I'm running based on report row selection. So you actually can build a page that says when I click an item on the left-hand side, I actually show the form embedded on the page itself. So it doesn't pop up as like a dialogue on top of this page. So you have a couple choices here, a couple options on how you can create interactable pieces. But in short, no, if your data structure itself has a list of something inside of it, it's a little more difficult to report on natively. So you're gonna have to either have two controls on a page and tie them together, or a right-click action that allows you to show that information. All right, a couple more questions coming. Hopefully that answers your question. Again, like I said earlier in the call, if my responses don't adequately answer your questions in this quick lunch and learn, we're more than happy to follow up with the support ticket. Just email support@decisions.com. Say, Eric, can't lunch and learn. Please help me, and we'll help you out. All right. Question came in. Is there any way to dynamically update a loading indicator text based on the process or data flow running in the background? Way to dynamically update loading indicator text based on the process or data flow running in the background. Okay, let's dive into this a little bit. Not entirely certain. Let's go back to our simple form here. I know there's a way to tell controls. I'm guessing this is on a form. So let's start with forms. There's a way to set up like loading indicators, right? I think it might be on the action visibility or in the active form flow. So if I have a form flow, you can say show loading indicator. Okay. I'm actually not 100% positive, and maybe any other panelists know where this loading indicator comes from. I believe it comes from the theme engine, which is part of the less files that you set up for your system. So as far as I know, and I'm going to say this tentatively because I don't know the answer, I don't know of a way to dynamically change which loading indicator, in this case, which loading indicator text you display when you're displaying it. But that I'm thinking of the loading indicator as something that's decision native, something that when you're loading a form or loading a page, and you guys may have seen our loading indicators, like if I quickly jump between a page that I built, where's my page? If I can try to get it to go. You may have seen it in the screen ever so quickly. There's, it says loading and it has the circle that kind of goes around. If my page took a long time to load, you would see that indicator kind of go until the page actually loads. That I believe is controlled by CSS or controlled by the theme. And so I don't know of a way to dynamically change that. But again, I'm going to take a quick note here. Dynamically change loading indicator. Marcus, I know how to get a hold of you. Let's go ahead and follow up after this call. We'll create a support ticket, track it a little bit, and see if there is a way to do that I don't know of, or if potentially we'll add that as a feature request. So I'm not entirely certain, but we'll see. All right, next one comes in. It says, is it possible to enable the option to select a statement rule template when adding an evaluation rule to a rule set? Right now, using the add evaluation rule action on the rule set always creates a blank statement rule. We'd like the ability to select a template similar to creating any regular rule designer element. Really, you can't select a template there. That's fascinating. Okay, let's look at that together in version 8 and see if I can recreate your scenario. So for everyone's benefit, so that we know, whenever you click like create rule, you have the option to create one of the types of rules we have, or what we would call, you can set up a rule to be a template. So if I have a rule here, let's just create a simple statement rule. And I'm going to call this my, evaluate person template. And I say, okay, I want the people to, when they're building a rule, to follow my template. So the template's always going to take in the person data structure, which is actually not the person data structure. And it's always going to start with, two statements, is the person's birthday less than today? I guess, is that not a date? I guess I added that as text. Okay. equal to today. Ignore the fact that that's not a rule that would ever actually run. And does the person's name contain Eric? So all I'm trying to do is say I have this rule, and when someone else goes to create a rule, they can potentially choose this template as a basis to start from, and it acts like a copy behavior that would copy that template and then allow them to make changes and build whatever rule they want. To do that, you right click on any, and you can do this for flows, you can do this for forms, you can do this, it's great for forms because you can set up like a template form for everyone to use. You can use it for reports, any decisions kind of designer element, you can use this for. You right click, you go to edit, advanced, and you can say, make this thing a template, and say yes. Once you do that, now people who go to create rules will see evaluate person as a template that they can start building their rule from. They click that template, say that's where I'm starting. And now we're going to say we're going to evaluate, the Andrew person. Sorry, Andrew, I'm picking on you because you're on the call. But you'll see that it started with my given inputs, my statement rules, my true and false outputs already defined, like everything's already here. And now I can make changes and say this is now the Andrew rule, and few Andrew rule, save it, and I've effectively created my own rule starting with the template as a basis. So anyway, that's not the question. That's just so everyone can know what templates are. The actual question is can you do that in a rule set? And I didn't know you could, so we're going to look at it together. So we're going to say this is going to be, let's just call this the insurance evaluation rule set. And again, because I'm a trainer by heart, I can't help but talk about what rule sets are. All rule sets is exactly what it sounds like. It's a set of rules, or even more than rules. It's a set of things that all do something in common. So a set of flows and rules that all are trying to accomplish the same goal. For example, if you have an insurance claim coming in, and there's potentially 150 rules that need to run against an insurance claim or evaluate an insurance claim. And those rules need to be updated and changed. You're going to delete rules, you're going to add rules. Well, to build that in a traditional workflow, you're going to have to edit the workflow every time you want to add or remove a rule. What a rule set is to say, I'm going to define commonality between a set of rules. So they all have the same inputs and they all are trying to achieve the same goal, like scoring metrics together or all returning trues and falses or whatever it is. And then you can just run them in batch. So in your workflow process, you say, call the insurance validation rule set. And it doesn't matter if there's 10 rules in there or 1,000, it's going to run them all and give you the aggregate results back. So anytime you want to have, maintainable rules that add and remove groups of rules together and just have one batch running of that all work together, they have common inputs and they all have common outputs, you would build that in something called a rule set. Super cool feature. Now, the actual question that came in is when you go to create the evaluation rules inside a rule set, and I've already see the answer, is there a way to pick a template rather than coming into here to just define a rule from scratch every single time? And it looks like the answer is no, but I think that's a really, really reasonable, smart feature request. So I'm going to add that to our roadmap right away. Ability to select template in rule set. Now, one kind of workaround, which isn't great, that will work, is you could template rule. You could do this. You could set up your template rule this way. You define all of the things that make it your template. So, I evaluate something, whatever exists. And again, this isn't a real rule, but say I wanted to use this again in my rule set, you could then copy it. Oh, no. So I could right click this and I could say edit copy rule. And then I could create, change one, which is a different, and it will actually copy all the things about this rule. So it's kind of a fake template. And then, well, what do you do? What if you don't want to run the parent because it truly is a template? Well, rule sets have this ability to actually disable rules inside of the rule sets. So you can create a rule in the rule set, disable it, set it up as your template, and then anyone who creates a rule inside that rule set can right click and copy rather than having to go create it from scratch. So that's a little bit of a workaround. It would save you a few clicks of having to set up the rule from scratch every time. But in short, no, I think I think in general, that's a smart feature request. I would say when you are adding something within a rule set, to have a rule set template would make a lot of sense. So I'm going to add that to our feature request. I think it's a really good one. Oh, thank you, Marcus. I appreciate you too. Marcus and I this is totally aside and not important. Marcus and I worked very closely together for a number of years, I believe, on a project for his company, and we had some good times. All right, wonderful. Very cool. All right, I believe I've caught up on questions. If I've missed a question in all my rambling and demonstration, please feel free to re-ask it in the chat, and I'll make sure to grab it and answer it again. But yeah, that's about it. We got about 20 minutes. So what I really want to tell you guys one thing really quick. And if there's no more questions, we can end a little bit early. But I wanted to show you guys a couple of things that are coming down the pipeline that I think are really, really important and really interesting. And so if you're looking forward through the rest of the year of what you can expect decisions to be working on and developing and putting out into version 8, I want to talk about the themes of what we're doing this year and what you can look forward to. The big two themes, three rather, okay, the big three that we are focusing on for the rest of this year are projects and how you build and maintain and keep track of projects and applications inside the decisions platform. The deployment of those projects, number 2, so being able to take those things and move them from one server to another. And then number 3 would be the designer experience. So updating like iconography in the designer workflows, being able to compare the flows together, being able to have multiple users edit a flow at the same time, being able to have those users really just have a much more cleaner experience. So we're focusing a lot of the features around that. And kind of as a side effort there, because in version 8, if you're unaware, we moved to containers, which is really changing the underlying core architecture of the entire code base from .NET framework, which really emphasizes heavily on like a Microsoft architecture kind of reliance. You have to be on a Windows server, you have to be on a SQL database. We moved away from that over the past couple of years to now be on .NET Core, which allows us to install on Linux. And if you're unfamiliar with hosting stuff, I won't get too deep into it for this audience, but we can install to Linux-based containers and have much more dynamically scalable installs of decisions. So as a side effort, we're continually working on improving the performance and speed and capabilities there. But as far as decisions is concerned, what you're going to notice here is towards Q3, we're doing things like adding this concept of a project view. So no longer are you going to have to maintain one massive folder tree inside decisions. Instead, we're going to break these up into consumable boxes that will be called projects. So you set up a project, and everything that goes to make a project run is going to exist inside one location. And there's going to be default reporting and dashboarding that shows you all the stuff inside of a project and its status and all the validations inside of there. So now developers are going to be less concerned with the kind of tribal knowledge of understanding a folder tree. And they're really just going to have to go to one location, a project folder, and they from there should get insight and value into everything inside of their project. It should also improve the way what we're going to add is like project health, so that we can understand validation issues and potential error handling issues, and we can report on that. And then the tie-in there is that now when you deploy, and we're rebranding the repository as now the deployment server, we're rewriting that entirely. So it's no longer developer-driven actions. I'm going to check this thing out and move to another server, or check it in and then move to another server and check it out. Now deployment's all going to happen as an automated function of a singular place, a singular node, or a deployment server. So the repository is getting a massive overhaul and rewrite, because I know it's a pain point. I'm actually thinking of you, Marcus, right now, of how you deploy and can encapsulate a project to send from one server to another. And that's going to include, again, a lot more visibility. One of the tones of the year as well is visibility. So when I'm looking at my projects on a deployment server, I can see which servers are connected, what versions they're on, what changes have been made on those servers versus what I have as kind of the root or the branch. And then from the deployment server, I can say, publish version 4, and that's going to run an automated test that deploys it and runs unit tests and notifies people and locks entities and does all sorts of cool stuff. So that is a massive rewrite for the year for deployment server. And then throughout the year, you're going to see things like icon and UI updates. Those are all coming. The workflow designer is getting a big refresh in quarter 3 as well to update the things inside of there. We're making things a lot simpler, like with simple form controls. We're going to make those added. We're going to add more of those to the products. So designing and building forms is a lot easier experience. We're going to update how you build and conceptualize pages in quarter 3. There's a lot happening in quarter 3, it looks like, but in quarter 3, like the ability to run a flow to source all the data to a page, kind of like you do with an active form flow on a form. We're going to have an active page flow for a page, which allows you to control the data in one singular flow rather than a bunch of like tile flows or those sorts of things. So a bunch of updates are coming this year. And now that we kind of got on 8 and we're released and we're stable with the container architecture, now we're really focused on features and functions to improve mostly the designer experience. We think that's something we really key for the year. So I just wanted to highlight that because I'm just really excited about it. I think it's going to revolutionize the developer experience inside decisions. I think it's going to save countless hours of hunting and development work and searching. We want to make it visible and easy and clear and make it more accessible. You can see here that we started the year focusing on capability, and we're kind of ending the year focusing more on actually simple form controls drops down here, focus on accessibility, making the tool easier to use and more visible. So I just wanted to highlight that because I think it's cool. And since I'm out of time, I guess that's the extent of what I'll talk about for today. But let me pause for just one more moment, see if there's any other questions, and if not, we can end a few minutes early and go enjoy the rest of your lunch break. There we go. There's the slide. All right, cool. Well, I'll slowly wrap up, but please feel free to ask questions here if you want to chime in the last couple minutes. But yeah, thanks for listening to me ramble. I think I'm actually doing another one of these next week, and I'm more than happy to talk about roadmap and those sorts of things. If you want to talk to me personally about product roadmap, feature requests you have or needs and those sorts of things, I'm more than happy. You can either contact me directly, eric@decisions.com, or your customer success manager, and they'd be more than happy to set up a call with me and you and your team. But I'm happy to go over the full roadmap presentation. It's about an hour long. We can talk about why we're positioning ourselves in certain ways and things we're doing next year and those sorts of activities as well. But feel free to reach out, eric@decisions.com. I'm happy to answer those questions. You can also email support to get a hold of me, or your customer success manager, as I said. If anything wasn't clear in my presentation here, again, you can email me for clarification or email support@decisions.com, and we're happy to get a ticket going. I have a couple questions here. They're only for you, Marcus, so I'll follow up with you directly, sir. Once I get a beat on those two questions, the dynamic changing loading indicator and the templates and rule sets, we'll go from there. And yeah, I believe that's all I have. So, all right, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Hopefully I'll chat with you all very soon, but you all have a wonderful day. Take care.